Every Sunday school child is familiar with the biblical story of Joseph, his coat of many colors, unquote, and his betrayal by his brothers, enslavement, and subsequent rise to great power in Egypt. In college, a friend recommended that I read the account of Joseph and the Israelite sojourn in Egypt in light of my new understanding of historical Jewish behavior. I took out my Bible and turned to the last pages of Genesis and the first of Exodus. After reading and reflecting on what I read, I think I finally understood why God was so put out with the chosen people. Genesis introduces Joseph at age 17, tattling to his father, Jacob, about his brother's wrongdoing. Jacob is so taken by Joseph that he gives him a coat of many colors that evokes jealousy in the two brothers. The brothers are also disgusted by Joseph's self-aggrandizement in relating his dreams of his future superiority. In one dream, Joseph tells how he's in a field binding sheaves and how his sheaf stood up, whereas his brother's sheaves were gathered all around, bowed low. Soon afterward, he relates a dream in which the sun, the stars, and the moon bowed down before him. Even Jacob rebukes Joseph for his display of insufferable chutzpah. His brothers hate him so much that they decide to kill him and subsequently throw him down an abandoned well. However, when they see an Ishmaelite caravan bound for Egypt, they decide to sell their brother into slavery instead. Joseph is taken to Egypt, and he's eventually sold to Potiphar, captain of the Pharaoh's guard. Now, Joseph's glib tongue and financial acumen led to his rise as overseer of the entire household. Potiphar trusts him with every detail. One day, while Potiphar is away, his wife cries out that Joseph is trying to rape her. And when the other servants come running, they find Joseph's clothes left behind as he fled. Joseph claimed it was he who was the victim of an attempted rape. But an enraged Potiphar throws him into prison anyway. Again, using his cleverness and acumen, Joseph rises to become the top trustee of the prison and virtually runs the jail and has all the prisoners under his control. In the prison are several of Pharaoh's servants. From them, Joseph undoubtedly learns all the gossip and goings-on in the royal house. Two of Pharaoh's servants, a butler and a baker, have dreams that Joseph cleverly interprets. The butler is eventually reinstated. And after the Pharaoh has a disturbing dream, the butler tells Pharaoh about Joseph's abilities. Brought before the Pharaoh, Joseph interprets the famous dream of the 7 fat beeves and the 7 thin ones. Intelligently, understanding the cyclical nature of prosperity and famine, he tells the Pharaoh that there will be 7 good years and 7 bad ones. Joseph then suggests that the Pharaoh appoint a man, quote, discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. That's from Genesis 42:33. Pharaoh then makes Joseph the most powerful man in Egypt other than himself and has him gather up the crops of Egypt. For the next few years, Joseph collects vast amounts of grain from Egyptian farmers and ensconces himself as, quote, the Lord of Egypt and ruler of Egypt, acting in the name of Pharaoh. When drought and famine finally hit, Joseph hatches a scheme to increase his and the Pharaoh's wealth and power. As the starving Egyptians appeal to the Pharaoh to get back some of the grain that they have deposited over the years, the Pharaoh tells them to go talk to Joseph. He tells them that they must pay for the grain and, quote, gathers up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt. Genesis 47:14. A severe depression occurs when the currency fails. The following are a few of the powerful verses from Genesis. This is 47:15. And the money failed in the land of Egypt, and in the land of Canaan. And all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, give us bread, for why should we die in thy presence? For the money faileth. 16. And Joseph said, give your cattle, and I will give you food for your cattle if the money fail. 17. And they brought their cattle unto Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for their horses, and for their flocks, and for the cattle of the herds, and for asses. And he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. 18. When that year was ended, they came to him a second year, and said unto him, we will not hide it from the Lord, how our money is spent. My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my Lord but our bodies and our lands. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and our land will be slaves unto Pharaoh. And as for the people, he made slaves of them from one end of Egypt to the other. Unquote. So Joseph first takes away all the money of the free Egyptians, then all their domesticated animals, then their homes and lands, and finally he puts them back in the land as Pharaoh's new slaves, with 20% of their crop going to the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh is ecstatic with this arrangement. His treasury is overflowing, and Joseph has taken away all the lands of the people and put them back on it, working essentially as sharecroppers. At the same time the Egyptians are going through this misery, Joseph sends for and brings all of his Jewish brethren to Egypt. Genesis makes it quite clear that Joseph gives the Israelites bags of gold and that they, quote, live off the fat of the land, unquote. 45:18. And take your father and your households, and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and ye shall eat of the fat of the land. 47:6. The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen let them dwell. 47:13. And there was no bread in all the land of Egypt, for the famine was very sore. So that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. But 47:27, and Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions therein, and grew and multiplied exceedingly. Now, one can imagine what the Egyptians thought about Joseph taking all their land and possessions and reducing them to slavery, while the foreign Israelites are given gold, free food, and the best of their land and all of Egypt. The Egyptians had built a grand civilization with magnificent artistic and cultural achievements, including advances in mathematics, engineering, architecture, astronomy, and agriculture. They had built the most enduring architectural creations of the world, the pyramids. How they must have chafed under the absolute power of this foreign tribe. According to Genesis and Exodus, the arrangement persisted for a long time, suggesting that the Israelites were the privileged administrators of Egypt during a long period of time. The Pharaoh could count on them having no loyalty to the native aristocrats or merchant class of Egypt, and they might have served the Pharaoh's purpose by directing the wrath of the people toward the Jews rather than toward the Pharaoh himself. At any rate, eventually, the numbers and political and economic power of Jews grew so excessive that even the royal family itself felt threatened. Now, this is a pattern that's often been repeated in Jewish history. Now, notice the following passages from Exodus. Exodus 1:7. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them. 1:8. Now there rose up a new king over Egypt, who knew not Joseph. And he said to his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and more powerful than we. And 1:10, come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass, when there falleth out any war, that they join also unto our enemies, and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Then are recorded dutifully the Egyptian pogroms against the Jews, and the Jewish celebration of Egyptian infanticide and Jewish expulsion and deliverance as represented in Passover.